Welcome to Funemployed. I'm James Daly, and on this channel I talk with self-employed creatives from all over the world in a whole range of different industries. Hear their stories, hear their advice for others, how they got to where they are today, and basically how work works for them on a daily basis. In this video, I'm talking with Costa, a super talented illustrator and creative from Melbourne, Australia, with an awesome illustration style. Check out his story now.
My name's Costa. I'm 26. I live in Melbourne and I'm a freelance creator.
Before you were doing what you're doing now, before you were working freelance, what was your job? Did you have a job before this, or did you jump straight into this from the get-go?
So I've never technically had a job outside of freelance graphic design and illustration. Um, from about 13 to 18, I was in a lot of bands. I was touring with bands. I was doing gig artwork for shows that I was putting on myself. And I kind of started graphic design out of more of a necessity to put out artwork for these shows and to advertise these shows. Um, it was only until about year 12, so I think I was 17, when my mum was kind of like, you have to go to university for something. Either you're gonna go to Victorian College of the Arts to be a drummer, or you got to figure something else out. And I was still playing in hardcore bands and stuff, and I didn't really think of anything else. Like, that's just all I wanted to do. But I was having so much fun with these like gig posters and artwork and stuff, and it was something new and exciting. So I really wanted to dip my feet into that. But I don't just dip my feet into anything. I kind of go head first into it and put all my energy into it. So once I started studying graphic design, it was only a year and a half course, but kind of drums and music kind of took a backseat, and this was kind of my new reality. So yeah, I've never actually had a quote unquote normal job. Like so design's all I've really known.
Do you still play today as well with music, or it kind of just became a hobby? You still play?
Still play. And it's funny, some of the bands that I was touring with or playing shows with, like super early on in my band's career, are bands that I'm, doing merch and tour artwork for now. Like bands like Thy Art Is Murder and D's Nuts and North Lane. Like I
Damn,
remember
that's sick.
I remember them back when they were playing, like 100 cap rooms in my
Wow.
shitty little country town. Like I remember them, and it's just really cool to kind of have that, to be able to look back and go, I remember you from all that way back then, and we're still
Mm.
working together today.
And let's go straight to what the jump point looked like for you. So you said you were studying at the time. What was that jump point from studying to starting to work entirely for yourself? Was it gradual? What was your first client like? What was that kind of transition like for you?
So when I was studying in our second year, there was a work experience program where we had to present ourselves to any really job that we wanted to get and do like a week or two's worth of free work for them, basically. And I really took that opportunity and wanted to make it into something that could turn into a job. So I hit up a company called Destroyer Lions. They're one of Australia's biggest touring agencies. They do a lot of bookings, they do a lot of venues, that kind of stuff. But at the time, what really caught my eye was they were running a lot of alternative nightclubs, stuff like
Mm.
Bang, Next, Hot Damn, that kind of
Ah, yeah.
stuff. And although like I wasn't into that club scene or anything like that, my bands had played at those shows, and I always really loved the poster artwork. So when it came to work experience, I kind of took that opportunity and was like, okay, I'm there for 2 weeks. I'm just going to work my ass off. I'm going to try and really impress them. So once I do graduate, I can become a freelancer for them. Because, that's the first time I ever learned what a freelancer was. That 2 weeks that I spent there, I was asking so many questions, and they were like, funnily enough, like, all of our work is outsourced. There's only a handful of us actually in the offices, but like stuff for design, it's all freelance. And they kind of taught me what freelancing was. So once I finished my degree, I kind of sent them an email and said, hey, I've graduated. I'd love to work with you, and let's try and make this happen. And they were my first client, and I worked with them for about 3 years. And that's working with them every single week. Like one ad a week turned into like 5 ads a week, turned into I was doing every single poster artwork for all of their clubs nationwide for like that last 2 year gap. So yeah, so university kind of allowed me to dip my feet into the real world and find out what freelancing really was. But on the other hand, at the same time that I was graduating, I was doing an internship for a startup clothing label. Uh, it was unpaid. It was just kind of I wanted to. I just kind of wanted to try something new. I've always loved apparel. I've always loved band merch. So being able to work for a startup was a really fun experience for me. I didn't know this until I got there, but it was literally me and the owner, and that was it. We were the whole company. So for 6 months, I was doing shipping, I was doing packing, I was steaming and folding the clothes, as well as doing the graphic design for them, all for free. Um, and it was that internship that kind of taught me a lot. Not in the way you'd think, though. Like, I kind of learned all the things of what not to do, how not to treat people, um, how not to do business, and kind of not be dodgy with business as well. During that 6 month period, there was a lot of verbal abuse, a little bit of physical abuse, a lot of psychological abuse from that person. And that was kind of what led me to kind of go insular and start working from home. For the longest time, I thought all bosses were going to be like that, just because my first one was so traumatic to me. And it was at that point that I kind of went, I don't want to work with anybody else. I don't want to put myself in that situation again. So I have to hustle for myself. I have to make things happen for myself, and I have to do this on my own, because at that point I really wasn't trusting of anybody else, and I really wasn't trusting in my own skills. Whatever confidence I had as a designer when I left university was completely depleted, and I kind of had to build myself up back from scratch. And yeah, it was that one client that kind of stuck with me for those 3 years that kind of helped me, build that confidence back up, build my skills back up, and kind of allowed me to pursue other forms of design.
Damn, man, that is quite an origin story. Like on the one hand, you've had your dream client was your first client, which is so
Yeah.
cool with all the poster design. But on the other hand, I'm so sorry to hear that happen. That's a terrible first boss. What an experience.
Yeah, and it just makes you double like overthink everything as well. Because like although they're not there anymore, their voice is in the back of your head. No, and it's kind of cool to be in a position where I am now, where I'm past that, and it's kind of good to look back and go, you know what, I was worth it. I am good at my job, and I should be confident about it. Like although it was a very traumatic event, like I wouldn't have it any other way, because it's led me to so many, amazing things. And, at the end of the day, I can, turn the lights off in my office and kind of walk home and be like, I've made this for myself. Like everything I've created for myself. There was no agencies, there was no managers, there was no bosses. It was 100% my own doing. And not many people can say that as well. And it's such a good feeling to know that you've created something for yourself. My biggest thing, and I've said this to younger designers as well, because they all talk about money. They all talk about, oh, money, once I get this amount of money, I'll be happy. And it's like I am successful, and I've been successful for years because I'm doing what I love and it makes me happy. Like the money's a secondary thing. Like the fact that I'm happy doing something is such a privilege. Like I have so many friends and relatives who are stuck in dead end jobs just because they need the money to pay the bills, or they don't really have any other outlet to make money. And it's like, I'm so lucky to be in this position. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've worked my fucking ass off for it, but not a lot of people can say they're genuinely happy doing what they're doing. And I just don't take that for granted either. So one of my most regular clients is a band called Diet is Murder, and they've I've they've been with me since probably 1 year into me going full time freelance. And the thing is, they just didn't want me to do what all the other merch designs were doing. When people think of death metal merch, they think of very detailed, very grimy, very textural kind of stuff. And they came to me and they're like, no, we don't want that. We want you to do you. So just create what you think will look good for us in your own style. And they were probably the first clients that kind of let me have that creative freedom and went, you just do you. And if we like it, we'll buy it. And if we don't, that's fine. Like it's really cool for clients to give you that creative freedom, because it shows you that you don't have to put yourself into these categories to make it in this business. You can do whatever your style is, whatever that may be, and the clients will come.
Once you're up and running, once you had those first clients, and you were working freelance, how did you learn the practicalities of business in terms of freelance work? So the finances, marketing, finding clients, managing those clients. What was that process like for you?
It all came really naturally to me. So as I said before, like, I was booking bands from 13 to 18. So I was sending emails, I was working out budgets, I was paying their invoices. So I'd been doing that for 5 years. So when it came to starting a business and, creating those relationships with my clients and kind of having a good solid financial base for my business, like, I'd been doing that like years and years before. It was kind of like a Karate Kid moment, like I was learning to wax on and off, not knowing that it was setting myself up for my future career.
Damn, so it just slotted right in. That's great. I think
Yeah.
you're the first person I've spoken to who said, yeah, it came naturally for that part. Everyone else is like, oh, I struggled so hard.
Don't
That's
get
really cool.
don't get me wrong, like, I've made mistakes, but it's things that lead to, you making sure you're paying your taxes on time. Um, I think taxes are something that a lot of freelance creators don't necessarily think about until it's too late and until they've made that mistake. And funnily enough, when I was working at that internship, I was put in charge of all the finances. I was calling the accountant. I was setting up our zero account. So I kind of learned from having to figure that out for that client, for that business. Such a big part of being a freelancer is creating relationships with your clients. So the relationships I was making back in the day with those bands, it just kind of came naturally to do the exact same thing with these clients. I don't want to just work with a client once. I want them to be working with me for years and years and years on. And like, I really cherish those clients that I do have those long relationships with. And it just makes for, better artwork. It makes for better projects because we have that rapport already. We know what each other likes. We know how to talk to each other. We know their language. And like,
Right.
once you look at a client as just a client, that's all they'll be to you, But I don't want that. I want to create relationships with these people, you know. I want to know about their personal life. I want to know how their weekend was because I genuinely care. Because if I was at my desk, the amount that I am right now, and I was just talking to all these strangers who, wanted my services, it wouldn't be as enjoyable.
Mm.
I get so much enjoyment out of my work because I'm doing it with people that I get along with. Because I'm doing it with people that I'm friends with.
What's the best thing in your opinion about being self-employed?
Creating something for yourself, uh, knowing that you didn't necessarily have someone else there to be your net. You know, everything that I've created and that other creators have created, we've done it by ourselves, for ourselves, with our own money, and you know half of it's just putting our money where our mouth is and believing in ourselves and creating all of this stuff for, not necessarily our own legacy, but yeah, I don't know how to explain it.
I think I know what you mean, though. It's just that kind of sense of accomplishment of kind of standing on your own 2 feet in the world.
exactly, it's that sense of accomplishment. And like,
Nice.
I run a clothing label as well as my, day to day stuff. And even just every time I release a new bit of clothing, it's that thing where it's tangible. I can hold it. I can hold this thing that I've created that came out of my brain and now it's on a t-shirt, and people want to buy it for some unknown reason to me.
That's how I think of it as well. It's kind of like you've added something to the collective humanity existence on the planet that wasn't there before, and it just came from you, purely you, and that's kind of your addition to the world.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Nice.
I love that.
And on the flip side, what is the hardest or the worst thing about being self-employed?
Self-doubt, your own thoughts about yourself, your own thoughts about your work. Um, you know, I think that's the hardest thing about being not only just an artist, but self-employed. You don't have a boss telling you what to do. You just have yourself to tell you what to do. And, sometimes you're a bit too hard on yourself, you know? But I think at the same time, it's that stress that you put on yourself and it's that anxiety that you put on yourself that can really create diamonds. It's that pressure that we get put under from ourselves, wanting to succeed, wanting to achieve, that makes us create better work every single time.
Kind of looking at the positive side of self-doubt. That's a really good point. Because you're never satisfied then, are you? You're never like, well, this is good enough. You're always trying to improve on the previous thing. And that adds up
Exactly.
over years. Yeah.
And it's not healthy, mind you. Like, there's like a very thin line of the amount of stress that your body can take, and how much pressure you can be under. But being self-employed, you kind of have to look at the positives of everything. That's why I say, I'd make all the same mistakes again because I learned something from it.
Mm.
And it's the same with self-doubt. Like, you know, you learn from your own mistakes, and you learn from, the work that you've created a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago.
What's been the high point of your career so far? Has there been a moment where you thought like this kind of justifies all the work and all the hard things, or has there been a moment where you thought, this is all worth it? This is such a cool moment of my career.
I think so. About 2 years ago, my girlfriend and I were able to go to the United States for about, I think it was a month. And it was at that point that I kind of realized that design has been able to lead me to other places outside of work. The amount of work I put into in my work has made me able to, travel the world. It's been able to take me to other places in the world that I probably wouldn't have gone to if I just had a normal 9 to 5 job. Not many people can take, a month or 2 months off of work at any specific time, or necessarily have the money to do it. So that realization 2 years ago was kind of realizing what I'd have created for myself and what that can lead me to do outside of work, you know, um, and just allowing design and this career that I've made for myself to kind of lead my life in other directions as well, but then at the same time, bring it back into the world of design. Uh, at the start of this year, I spent 1.5 to 2 months in South America with my girlfriend. And the entire time, like, we were having fun, we were going to wineries, we were, exploring cities, but I was taking photos the entire time. And the amount of times over just this year that I've looked back on those photos and looked at color palettes or looked at imagery, and then I've just brought that into my work, is absolutely countless. And yeah, so I think the highlight for my career is being able to do more with it. Being able to explore the world, being able to, explore the world of my own clothing label, and just kind of build on, uh, build on the artwork that I've done for clients and just improve every single time. So it's not necessarily one specific moment, it's more the amalgamation of what it's all been and what it's created for me.
Using it as the vehicle for you to experience life a lot more than if you were just, I guess, stuck in an office job doing nothing else.
Exactly. And I really think that's what makes great art. You know, you don't take all your inspiration from one place, you take it from 100 different places, and it allows you to bring it all together and create something new.
It's that mixing pot. Your unique creativity is all the unique points of view that you alone have and what you then build out of the combination of those.
Exactly.
So nothing's
Um,
entirely original. You're just mixing everything else that you've seen and seeing what comes out of it.
exactly. There's a great book that I read really early on when I was at university. It's called Steal Like an Artist. And, you know, the name's just, clickbait, but it really talks about, when you're creating, again, you don't take inspiration from just one place. You take it from 100 different places, and you don't take from, like, let's just say I'm working on illustration. You don't necessarily take inspiration from other illustrators. You can look at photography. You can look at embroidery. You can look at, like, take from all of these different art forms, because that's, at the end of the day, what's going to make your work different. That's what's going to make you stand out.
Okay, so this question has, I guess, two different answers. There's the COVID answer and then there's the non COVID answer. So we'll probably go with the non COVID answer.
Yeah.
What does your typical workday look like? How do you structure your day?
I wake up very, very early. So 6 o'clock, I'm in my kitchen having my first coffee of the day. I travel on the train to my office. I get to the office around 6:30, 7ish, depending on how long it takes me to have that coffee. um, and then from about 7 o'clock till 9, it's looking over emails that came in from the day before or from that morning. I work with a lot of people from overseas, so a lot of our time frames don't necessarily match up. So getting in super early kind of allows me to still have a conversation with them and start work for them. Um, and yeah, that morning ritual is kind of making any amendments that needs to be made, re-looking over artwork before it gets sent off, and then about 10, it's time for my second coffee of the day. And then I kind of set myself up with a list of things I need to do that day. And the rest of the day is literally just going over that list, going, okay, let's start a project. Let's get this merch design started and finished within, like a 4-hour bracket. And then I just kind of go from project to project, start, finish, um, up until about 4 in the afternoon. And then it's at that time I have my third coffee of the day. I kind of look over everything I've created for that day, kind of go everything with a fine tooth comb, come back to it with fresh eyes, make any changes that need to be changed, before I finish up for the day. And that's when I'll usually send any artwork proposals that need to go out. I send them at the very end of the day just so my clients can get them either that night or the coming morning. And it just allows me time to kind of stop for the day, stop thinking about that project, and then come back in the next day, hopefully with an email about that project. Um, and yeah, it sounds kind of boring, but I really like that time in the morning that I get to myself. Everyone else is still asleep, or if they're in America or Europe, they're just winding down for the day. So I kind of have the world to myself and I'm able to think. And that's usually when I do some concept sketching. That's usually when I do my idea generation before, I sit down for my normal, 9 till 5 and just get stuff done.
Makes a big difference, doesn't it? I've only just started doing that in the last 2 weeks, and productivity's been so much better. Just that one extra hour makes all the change.
Yeah, and you just feel like you're getting a head start on the
Yeah.
world as well, and everyone else. Um,
Yeah, I mean, you can get to this point of the day and you don't feel like you're playing catch up anymore. Like I get to 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock and think, oh man, the list is still so long, but because you are a little bit ahead of the game, it's fine.
I don't know. I've been doing this for years and years, and it's just how I've found I work best, and just finding that routine that works for you best. This routine isn't obviously for everyone. Like, it relies on a lot of coffee and a lot of you know self reliance to kind of like not get distracted. But yeah, I think one of the things of working for yourself and working from home like I have for so many years prior to this year, it kind of gives you that obedience to not get distracted during work. When you're at work, you're at work. And, I love the train trip home because it allows me to kind of stop thinking about work for the day, kind of go into like chill house mode. So when I am at home, I'm present. I'm present there with my girlfriend. I'm present with my pets. When I'm with them, I'm 110% with them. But when I'm at work, I'm 100% there for work.
If you could give your past self some advice on your journey to make your journey easier to get to where you are today, what advice would you give your past self?
So I got given this piece of advice about a year and a half ago by a friend of mine. It's the best piece of advice I've ever given. I've given it to other people as well. And it's work like a greyhound. So when greyhounds are on the track, they've got their blinders on and their sole purpose is to run. So equating that to, being a creative, when you have work, when work does come your way, that is your focus. You put your blinders on, you don't think about anything else, you focus on the project at hand. But then when it's not time to race, you don't have any work, not much is on for the week, you don't focus on work. You focus on, clearing your mind, taking that time to have a break. And, I usually take that time to expand my knowledge. I read a lot of books, I read a lot of art books, so that when, things are quiet, because lulls do happen throughout the year, especially when you're a freelancer, um, it kind of allows you that downtime to not be so stressed, to think about yourself and not think about the job at hand.
Relaxing helps you be productive, as backwards as that sounds.
Yeah, and like for me, relaxing doesn't necessarily mean laying on a couch or watching a movie. It usually means reading books, listening to music. I listen to a lot of albums that my clients put out. It helps me music a lot more. It helps me understand their lyrics a lot more and what they're trying to portray. And I'm very fortunate that when a new album cycle does come through, I do get these incredible albums a month or so before the rest of the world does. So I kind of use that time to really figure out what they're trying to say. So even if I'm not necessarily working for them at that time, I'm still working with them, if that makes sense.
That's a pretty good perk of the job as well. Getting those albums is nice.
Oh, it's pretty good.
That actually leads in really well to the next question. And you mentioned this a bit earlier with one of the books you read, but what resources would you recommend checking out? These could be books, these could be podcasts, websites, blogs, anything that's helped you that could help other budding illustrators and designers.
For me, it's just exposing myself to as much art, as much different art, and as many artists as I possibly can. My work is, big lines, bold colors. It's very straightforward. But as you can see behind me, like the artwork that I, purchase and that I like to surround myself is extremely different to anything that I would create for myself. You know, uh, I would love nothing more than to every Friday night go to one of my friends' galleries and see a new batch of, whatever artists they have on at the moment. And, experiencing other art forms and experiencing other artists and just talking with other artists is the biggest inspiration for me at all. Not at all. It's just such a big inspiration for me. And it allows me to bring some of those elements that I see in their work and bring it into my own. So my girlfriend is an installation artist. She does a lot of, big installations, very conceptual work, um, and just being with her for the last 3 years, it's kind of allowed me to kind of put more emotion into my work. With installations, it's all about making you feel something. And I've loved, taking that inspiration and trying to bring it more into my work, creating work that not only looks beautiful, but makes you feel a certain way, makes you feel joy, makes you feel happiness, or in terms of my band artwork, makes you feel the way that music makes you feel.
Where can people follow you online? Where's the best place to keep up with your work?
The best place you can find me is on Instagram. It's Chris X Costa. I put up all my work there. I usually post a couple of times a week. It's kind of the best place to see an evolving portfolio of my work. I also run an independent clothing label called Badlands. You can find us on Instagram or at badlandsbrand.com. Um, that's just kind of a fun passion project for myself, but we put out new clothing every single month. And yeah.